I was curious how you, because I want to go into, actually, I want to jump over to it now because there's another project. I think it's heap leach monitoring system that you put in, which is
Mhm.
kind of interesting. I wanted to shift gears just because I don't want the to sort of give the audience just a perception this is all you're doing is that automation because you're doing a lot of other problem solving as well. So just quickly, Brian, can you just give us an overview of this project as we'll bring that video up as well that shows it in action?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so historically, and if this client reached out to us and they wanted us to look at their heap leach pads. So the pads are quite large. They're about 3 kilometers by 2 kilometers, and it's crushed rock. It's recently laid, so it's not particularly attractive to walk on. It's covered in acid, so they're irrigating the pads with acid, and they were having troubles where they weren't getting good coverage. They were getting spots that there was too much flow. There's spots where weren't getting enough flow, and they weren't able to monitor it effectively. They'd have people out there looking at it, try to fix it. They had a series of manual valves that they're opening and closing. So they reached out to us and they asked us to propose a solution, and we did. And we said, well, why don't we look at this differently? Why don't we do this in a totally different way? Why don't we use drones? Why don't we fly over it and use thermographic cameras to identify areas that um, are you're getting good coverage and areas that you're not getting good coverage. Let's use automated valves so that we can redistribute the flow. Um, and we've had a massive impact, and the client has been very pleased with the solution. They've decreased the amount of labor required by 90%, and their copper production has gone up by 2%, which is a very big number.
On something like this, or the last project we saw, or anything that you do, this is something I'm always curious about when you're trying to implement something new. Do you start with a one pager of, hey, we got a bit of a concept here, and they go, yeah, or do you drop the big heavy book in front of them and say, hey, here's this major thing we're going to do? How do you even move that conversation along? And especially on a mining operation where there's so many different voices that sort of need to hear, well, not just to talk and ask questions, but also to hear the challenges and and voice their concerns. How do you even start that process and sort of uh, walk it through until the finish line?
Well, I think you have to set expectations with the client, and that's done by listening to the client. And that particular video that you've shown, what the client was originally asking for, and we were listening to them, is exactly what we delivered. But how they were asking for it, the project probably would never have happened because the overall capital cost to do it the way they were recommending or looking at doing it was just too costly for infrastructure. So not only did we, when we listened to them and understood the project, we went back and said, this is what you're proposing, but how about looking at doing it this way? And it was just a one pager saying, are we on track? For example, do you need to have thermographics of this leach pad 24/7, or can it be passed over a few times a day? Is that acceptable? Because in this case, a leach pad doesn't change that much in hour by hour.
Mm.
So therefore, the client said, yes, that is acceptable. So therefore, the original concept of theirs to put up pillars and cameras all over a 3 kilometer by 2 kilometer pad and putting these down installed with the infrastructure, that's gone. That can be all replaced by a simple drone with an infrared camera on. So by taking what they're asking for, understanding that there could be a different way of doing it and accomplishing it, and then sitting down there with them and going through it. The same with the automation. They wanted all the valves to be hardwired through conduit back to a server. We said we can actually do this via solar, with each of these valves controlled by a solar power, and we can do it all via remote and no wires. And they said, would that be acceptable to them? They said, yes, that'd be acceptable. Again, all this did was bring down the overall cost to the client. It gave them exactly what they were looking for. And then they got the results and were able to go ahead with the project because it was within budget. So first off, to answer your question, I kind of went around, but yes, we start off with a simple, I would say a broad view of what we're going to offer or concept, get some consensus from the client, listen back to the client. Are we on track or have we gone off track somewhere? And if we have, which happens, we go back to the drawing board and then bring back another plan. And then once a concept is agreed upon, then we'll go back into do the details and then do the costing for them.